Welcome to the Career Intelligence Podcast. I'm your host, Meredith Dinitz, career coach and founder of Your Career Happiness Professional Coaching. My guest today is Laura Johnson, an executive career strategist and one of fewer than 25 certified master personal branding strategists worldwide. Laura brings more than 35 years of experience in leadership development, executive coaching, and talent strategy, helping high-performing leaders understand what really drives executive advancement. Her work focuses particularly on women in male-dominated industries, and she specializes in visibility, influence, sponsorship, and strategic positioning. What I enjoyed most about our conversation is that Laura pulls back the curtain on something most professionals never get to see: the hidden conversations happening behind closed doors before a promotion is ever announced. We talk about why working hard and delivering results isn't always enough, the difference between having a mentor and having a sponsor, and what you can actually do right now to make sure your name is coming up in the rooms you're not in. If you have ever wondered why someone else got that promotion when you felt more qualified, or if you've ever felt like you were doing everything right but still not moving forward, this conversation is for you. Now let's get started. Hey, Laura, I'm so glad you're here today.
It's nice to be here.
Before we jump in, can you give everyone a quick overview of who you are and what you do?
I am a master personal branding strategist. I'm one of 25 in the whole world through Career Thought Leaders, which is how you and I know each other. But basically, I work with senior women who are working their way up and getting promoted into the C-suite in male-dominated industries. We work on those hidden conversations. I have been doing career development and career work for 18 years. I come out of financial services and human resources, specifically training and organization development. And before that, I was in social work in Chicago. So I've had kind of a variety of careers and am now here doing resumes, LinkedIn profiles, and coaching for women looking to get into the C-suite.
I love that. I was really looking forward to our conversation because I do think it's something a lot of professionals wrestle with. They work hard, they deliver results, and then they wonder why someone else got the promotion opportunity and not them. Why do you think so many people believe that if they just keep doing great work, someone will notice it?
It's really what I call a catch-22 in careers. And the earlier we can learn how to address this, the better. So I'm so glad we're doing this today. It's in part due to the fact that we are developed professionally. When we step into our first career, we're developed to think that if we work hard, we produce excellent work, we get recognized, we get promoted. And that happens for a few years. So that's how we're brought up. It's also how we're brought up in the school system. In school, from an early age, we're taught that excellence speaks for itself. So once we get to a certain level, it's no longer just about competence. If competence is all you're focused on, you're being one-dimensional, and people stop seeing you. They know you can do the work, but they stop seeing what your potential might be. Your performance gets you the credibility, but your reputation is what's getting you the opportunities. And reputation is not something that's organic, that builds from what you accomplish. It's really something that you have to be mindful of. And that can sound calculating, and I don't mean it to sound that way. But in some ways, you do have to think about the reputation that you're creating, as we do in any part of our life. And so the higher you move, the more you're going to see that decisions aren't solely made based on what you've accomplished or your performance. They look at you and the seniors start asking, can they lead something twice as large as what they're doing? Or can they represent the board in the way we want? Do they look like an enterprise leader? Are they trusted with our clients? Could they replace me? That's a big question. Who is replacing me? And that whole succession planning conversation that happens when we're not in the room. So we have to look at career advancement differently. We have to think about the decision based on an assessment of what our future leadership potential is, not what we've accomplished. That's important, but it's not the only thing. And I think women especially can get caught up in becoming indispensable. And I've had many clients that are indispensable. They are the go-to person for a certain kind of accomplishment or a certain department. And that feels good. But ironically, it also means you need to stay exactly where you are. We need you where you are. We don't want to move you. And no one is talking about replacing you so that you can move on to something bigger. So that's the dilemma we see.
It is really hard. If working hard isn't enough, what are people missing?
Start to think about what might be happening behind the scenes because, as you said earlier, there are people who do get promoted. I'm accomplishing all these great things and I'm meeting all my KPIs and I'm meeting all my goals, and then he's getting the promotion. So, what's happening is once you hear about a promotion, things have already happened behind the scenes. People have probably already been identified. So, they really start looking for who goes beyond just creating the results for their team. Who do they know? Who do they feel confident about? When they go into a promotion conversation, the C suite team is saying, who comes to mind? They're not saying who's qualified, they're saying who's coming to mind. And that distinction is everything because people remember our stories, they don't remember our resumes at all. And I'm a resume writer, but the resume is one of the last things they remember. They don't just remember your list of accomplishments, they remember that you're known for something and that you're known beyond your team, your department, your division. You're known in the organization for something and you've built that reputation. People think promotions happen in the interview rooms, they don't. They're looking for, do you influence your peers? Do you think enterprise wide? Do you talk enterprise wide? When you talk about the results you achieve, are you showing how that changes what is happening in the company and what is happening for the company's results? And that's why, beyond just your performance, what is your executive presence? What's your visibility?
It sounds like these conversations are probably happening earlier than people realize. Do you find that to be the case?
Absolutely. Sometimes years before, because most organizations have succession planning environments. So they are looking for who's going to fill the bench, if you will. So the C suite's looking for who is going to be the next CFO or who's going to be the next COO. They aren't just waiting until that position becomes available. And that happens sometimes years before.
And do you think it's fair to say this also could be happening for those trying to get to a director or a VP level from a manager if they're also moving up the ladder a little earlier on?
Absolutely. You become people looking at you as that potential person to step to that next level.
So, one of the things I hear people use interchangeably is mentor and sponsor. I'm curious, what's the difference?
Yeah, and I love this topic because people are constantly mixing the two up. Most of us have mentors throughout our careers, but there is a difference. And it's something that I've really started to look into because I didn't really think about it. And when I was building my own career internally, I never would have thought about I had mentors, but having a sponsor would have made a huge difference for me. Mentors talk to you. So mentors are like coaches. They're developing you, they're giving you advice, they're helping you think through issues that you're coming across. It's more of a one-on-one, more growth-oriented kind of relationship. Sponsors talk about you. So sponsors are the people who get to know how you work, get to know what you think, and then they put their reputations on the line. They go into that succession planning meeting, and then your name comes up because they're the one that talks about you. They create opportunities for you. Sometimes before you think you're ready, your name starts to come up and they'll defend your name when it comes up. They advocate for you when you're not in the room. The mentors help you become ready and they build your confidence. Sponsors help you see that you're ready and they build opportunities for you. So that's the real difference.
Do you think most people even realize they're missing a sponsor, or is it usually a blind spot?
I think it is a blind spot. It certainly was for me. And one way you can look at it is where you are right now. You probably have a mentor, but start to ask yourself some practical questions. Is your name coming up in rooms you're not in? And especially if you have a mentor in that room, if the mentor is not saying your name, you don't have a sponsor. Have you been recommended for projects? So outside of your daily responsibilities, is your name coming up and are you being recommended for projects? That could indicate that the person recommending you could be a sponsor. Are you being introduced to other senior leaders? Do they put their own credibility behind you? When you do step up for something, is a more senior leader stepping up behind you and saying, yeah, I think that person is the right person for this? And if you're thinking about these things now, is someone creating opportunities for me? If no one comes to mind, you probably don't have a sponsor yet. So it's time to think about how do you build that?
If someone realizes that they don't have a sponsor, where do they start?
Yeah. Sometimes creating relationships for promotional opportunities can feel a little calculating. And it might be, I don't know, but you also learn a lot from your sponsors. But the sponsor, what do they need to know? They need to know things like how do you think? How do you solve problems? How do you influence people? How do you handle pressure? All of these things you do. So it's not like you're creating a false impression of who you are. The first thing that you want to do is build visibility around some important work that goes beyond your team. So take a stretch assignment. You don't have to volunteer for everything, but look for leadership opportunities, especially where there's a sponsor you think would be good to have on your team, if you will. So cross-functional initiatives, enterprise projects, committees, if there's some strategic committees that you could join, transformation efforts, all of those things can start to help you build visibility and in that way build relationships that turn into a sponsor kind of relationship. You want to think beyond your job description. You want to start building your reputation. So when you're talking about what you've accomplished, don't just report the activity that you did or the result that you achieved. Explain the impact beyond that. You're not just solving a problem today, but you're actually growing the business tomorrow. What you're doing today and how that relates to those bigger enterprise-wide goals, because then you're drawing a line between what you're doing and helping people see how that translates. We also sometimes think they'll know. They're leaders, they're senior leaders. They know how what I did today translates to what they need tomorrow, but they don't. You need to show them because they're not thinking that way. So you want to make your thinking visible, and that's step 3 is people can't sponsor people if they don't see them and if they don't see their thinking. So sharing your ideas, and you don't have to wait for a big meeting and then stand up and share your ideas if that's not comfortable at the beginning. Call a meeting with someone that you've done a project with now because you've found a project that you can do with the sponsor that you're targeting and share your ideas one-on-one. Ask questions and really look at what you can dive into to ask those better questions. Communicate your perspective, not just your accomplishments. And then 4 is building genuine relationships. Sponsorship is more about how I can help that person, how I can be curious about what that person has done and what that leader has accomplished. How can I learn from them? How can I contribute further to what they want to accomplish and what the company wants to accomplish? People sponsor people they know, not strangers with impressive resumes.
How do you actually ask for sponsorship though, without it feeling awkward or transactional? Because I know you said like with networking, you can feel that way.
It goes back to looking at what's going on in the organization and finding opportunities to offer assistance. Just look around you, look around and look for committees that you can be a part of so that sponsor that you're targeting who runs the committee sees you interacting in the committee and hears your ideas. It's looking beyond your desk and wherever your team is.
Clearly, it sounds like you want to try to find a sponsor sooner rather than later to be that advocate in your corner.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, I work with senior women, but I don't think this should start when you think you want to get into the C-suite. I think it should start as early in your career as it can start. Even when you're new to the organization, start looking around for things that are interesting to you. At that point, it might not necessarily be, oh, I want to do this because that will get me connected to this person. But maybe it's just something you're interested in because you don't know the organization or even your capabilities when you're first starting out. So maybe it's just that looks interesting. I'd love to get involved. How do I get involved? Take on an extra assignment or joining a committee and start to interact and get to know people. And that way you'll start to identify the people you think could be most beneficial for you in your career and build that. And I think they change throughout your career. So you may have a sponsor who's helped you early in your career that may change. They may become a mentor. And then you're looking at somebody else who's becoming more of a sponsor for you.
It's so great. You shared a story with me about someone who went from a vice president to a senior vice president. And I thought it was such a great example of what sponsorship can look like in real life. Would you mind sharing that story?
Oh, sure. This is a VP, and she actually came to me for a resume. She thought, my resume is not getting me noticed, so I want you to redo my resume. I've heard you're good, so let's redo my resume. And when I looked at it, she had a pretty good resume already. She was covering the right kinds of things, but she was one of those people who was exceptional at fixing teams. That was her thing. So they were moving her laterally, fixing teams. They never moved her up. She was fixing team after team, and she was trying to get these other positions, and it was her resume that she decided wasn't working. But she wasn't, first of all, talking about her accomplishments on an enterprise level. So the first thing we did was we started talking about, okay, you've accomplished these things on your team. How does that change the organization? And how would you talk about that to someone in the organization? Everyone knows you're brilliant and they love you. They don't want to move you because they think once they move you, your team's going to fall apart or your department's going to fall apart. So how do you get them to see that, first of all, you can think beyond your team? The other thing she was doing was she was building a bench, but she wasn't building it out loud. Joe, if I'd have to take vacation, Joe's usually the one who is going to take on my role while I'm gone. But she needed to let them know that she had this bench that she was building. So we built the bench and communicated the bench, and she began to communicate differently about what she was accomplishing, adding organizational outcomes instead of just functional success. She was starting to build broader relationships, so not just with her team and her division, but she started to go beyond her division. She was in a large automotive industry company, so there were a lot of divisions. She started talking about her enterprise perspective and making that visible. So they began to see her differently. They began to see how she saw the bigger picture, that 3D. She became more of a 3D leader rather than the one-dimensional leader. And once they saw that, when she did finally find an opportunity for a promotion, she got that promotion. And the resume had nothing to do with it. It was that she had shifted their perception of her capabilities.
Did she also have a sponsor along the way that helped with that, or was it more her messaging?
It was her messaging, but in the end, I think as she was talking more about what she was able to accomplish and how it related to the larger company, maybe it happened more organically for her. But she found some people who said, I'm kind of interested in hooking my star to your star. She was older. If she would have known about this when she was younger in her career, she could have been more thoughtful about getting those sponsors instead of letting it happen organically, which takes longer. You see it a lot. Two people who are fairly equal in their capabilities and their outcomes. You might have two directors that have similar results. and the one director is staying in their lane, they're doing their job. They may even have really good numbers, better than this other director, but this other director is building relationships and they're taking on cross-functional opportunities and they're talking to senior leaders and they're developing sponsors and advocates. And even though on paper, when that promotion comes up, their numbers look similar, the organization's going to say, but we know that person. You don't really know this person, but we know that person. And that's the person that gets the role. And that's what we were seeing. How come I even have better results, but he's the one getting the job? And that's how it happens.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you if there are common mistakes that you see people make. Clearly, this last example, even with the two directors, it's being out there, but maybe even when you're looking for that sponsor or not, anything else other than what you shared that are common mistakes? I know we touched on a few.
Know that it takes time. So, not getting frustrated if you don't get the one on one meeting the first time you ask for it, not being frustrated if you're not picked to be a part of that initiative that you really want to be a part of, because it does take time to, and relationships, true relationships, take time to build. I think it's about not being afraid to tell the whole story. And that's the other thing we think is we get up in front of a room and they want us to make our report on what our team's accomplished and we want to get done as quickly as we can. So we miss opportunities to talk about how we made the decision to go in one direction as opposed to another. We miss opportunities to talk about, I have a narrative method that I've created, and it's the word narrative. So if we think of narrative, each time we want to go into a meeting, we think of the word narrative. The first letters are what's happening in the business. The N is normalizing the context. What's happening in the business? Articulating how you made your decision. The A. Why did you choose the direction you chose? What did you prioritize and what did you not pursue? Reference the risks. What was the uncertainty? What exposure were you navigating and trying to make sure you navigated around? Anchor your outcome. What changed as a result? And most importantly, how does that relate to enterprise impact? So you changed this as a result on your team. How did that affect the broader business? And then the I, V, and E is just making sure of narrative, is just making sure you're telling the story consistently, that you're validating it through language that people in these leadership positions are going to understand. So if you're talking to the CFO, use CFO language, talk about budget, the budget side of things or the expenses side of things. And the E is just making sure that it's embedded as your default. So you're always communicating this same way each time. And it takes time at the beginning to go through, okay, when I go into the meeting, I want to do the NARRAT. What is that going to look like? And isn't that going to mean that I stand up there for 20 minutes? No, because you'll get your story together, you'll get the key things that you want to say, but then you don't miss demonstrating or articulating the process that you took to get to your result and how that result relates to the bigger picture, which is what you want to be doing.
Yeah, because that's what really matters to them at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Yep.
This has been such a great conversation. And I think this is one of those topics that can really change the way people think about growing their careers. But if someone listening remembers just one thing from today's conversation, what would you want it to be?
Not to think you don't have time to tell your whole story. So start talking about how you got to your decision and how you created the result and how that affects the company. Don't just keep your head down and think people are going to notice. Tell your story. Tell your whole story.
Great advice.
Absolutely.
Well, before we wrap up, where can people learn more about you or connect with you?
So my website is www.llejcareers.com. And you can also find me on LinkedIn, Laura Lee Ellen Johnson. I use my whole name because there are 100 million Laura Johnsons out there. And send me a question through a DM. You can email me at laura@llejcareers.com. Ask me questions. ask me for advice. I'm happy to help. I'm happy to be a mentor. Don't think I could be a sponsor for you in your organization because I'm not there, but I'm happy to answer questions, mentor people, and help them in any way.
Thank you. And I will also include all of your contact information in the show notes as well. But thank you so much again. This was really a great conversation. And I think people are going to get a lot of value from what you shared.
Thank you too, Meredith. Thank you for thinking of me and asking me to be here today because
Thank
I love talking about careers. We know that, you and I.
I want to thank Laura for joining me today. This was one of those conversations that I think is going to stick with a lot of people because it shines a light on something most professionals never get to see. A few things really stood out to me. Her point that your performance gets you the credibility, but your reputation is what gets you the opportunities. That distinction alone is worth sitting with. I also loved her reminder that promotions are not decided in interview rooms. By the time you hear about an opportunity, conversations have already been happening behind the scenes, sometimes years before. Her framing of the difference between a mentor and a sponsor was so clear. Mentors talk to you, sponsors talk about you. If no one is saying your name in the rooms you're not in, it's probably time to start building those relationships. And her closing thought is the one I keep coming back to. Don't assume people know what you're contributing. Tell your story. Tell your whole story. If you would like to connect with Laura or learn more about her work, you can find her on LinkedIn as Laura Lee Ellen Johnson or visit her website at llejcareers.com. And I will include those links in the show notes. If today's conversation resonated with you, this is exactly the kind of work I do with my clients. I work primarily with mid-career professionals who feel successful on paper but are starting to question what's next, whether that's navigating a job search, pursuing a promotion, or simply getting clear on what they really want. You can learn more at yourcareerhappinesspc.com or connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow the Career Intelligence podcast and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back soon with another episode. In the meantime, stay curious, keep learning, and keep building your career intelligence.
Forward.